Welcome everyone to the Peer2Peer podcast. Today we're interviewing Carey Loch. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves first?
Yeah. I'm Amelia. I'm Form 4.
I'm Tanya. I'm Form 5.
And I'm Sophia, and I'm also Form 5. And would you also like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Carey Loch, and I'm the presently the Senior Associate Athletic Director for the Scarlet Knights for Life program in Rutgers University and Rutgers Athletics.
Very nice. All right, so we'll just start off with, we all know you've had an incredible career journey at Rutgers, starting in alumni relations, and now you have a role as the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Student Athlete Development. Do you want to share how your path has unfolded and what inspired you to choose this career or anything like that?
No, sure, absolutely. I've been at Rutgers almost 26 years. It'll be 26 years in March, and I started in a couple of different roles, but I know we're going to talk about them a little bit later, but really when I was reflecting on this question, I just said yes a lot, right? I think different opportunities have presented themselves, and I've put myself in spaces and tried to learn and learned about myself and learned from others. And I just really have found that one thing leads to the next thing. And the more I got to know myself as I went along in my career, the easier it became for me to kind of position myself to do the next thing. So, and I love being at Rutgers. I love especially that I've been able to be in kind of three completely and totally different departments doing somewhat related, but also very different things. So it's been a nice journey to have a lot of mixed experiences at the same place and be able to stay here this whole time.
Very nice.
I
was just gonna ask a follow-up. Did you ever expect that you were gonna go down this path? Because I know you said you just kept saying yes to opportunities. I was just wondering if you had any.
Not really. I mean, I think when I moved, I grew up out west, and when I moved out here, I didn't even think that I would stay in New Jersey this long, right? It was like a decision that I made and just kind of ended up out here. And now it's, 27 years later that I've been here. And I think that if opportunities hadn't presented themselves here at Rutgers that matched up with what I was looking for at the time when I was feeling like I was ready to do something different, I would have maybe gone somewhere else, right? I've applied for different jobs, interviewed at different jobs, which I think is totally cool for people to say, right? Like you don't even have to decide if you're going to leave or take a different job. You just have to decide if you're going to try and see what's out there. And every time kind of a new opportunity has shown up. And honestly, once I got, past 20 years, there are benefits to staying at Rutgers. It's a state institution. There are actual benefits to staying here for 25 years. And so at that point, then I kind of set my sights on making sure that I was here that whole time, but personally making sure that I was doing something that I was really passionate about and gave me opportunities to continue to grow and learn. So
I think that's a really good mindset to have.
So what skills or lessons have you carried throughout these different positions?
Yeah, I mean, early on in my career, I was able to kind of hone in on what I was good at versus and that was kind of important when I was just getting started in a career, was to recognize, where like my talent and my skill was really strong. And then as I got a little bit further along in my career, I was able to focus a little bit more on what I really enjoyed. And so I think that that's one of the things that I say a lot to people now that I'm older in my career journey, is just, you might be good at like 10 or 12 different things, but if you can really hone in and find the two or three things where you're also really motivated or really passionate, that's like the hack to me, right? That's where you're like, okay, I often will tell people like, I know I'm a pretty good writer, but I also know myself well enough to know that I don't want to be an author or even like a copy editor, right? I enjoy writing at times, but it's not something that I would want to do every single day, day in and day out. So I think that would be kind of over the course of my journey. I've said yes to a lot of things. I've got to try a lot of things. I've had some really cool experiences. And the life lesson, I think, for me is that I spend a lot of time up here. And so that reflection is the point where I've kind of been able to say like, oh, like I think I'm pretty good at this, and I actually wake up in the morning excited about it. And so I'm going to use those two things to be what actually points me in my next direction.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. So, where we're at right now, you oversee Scarlet Knights for Life. Could you tell us more about this program and how it supports student athletes?
Absolutely. So the best way I know how to describe it is if you're a student athlete at a school like Rutgers, it's a, big time, college athletics. You've got your academic piece over here and you've got your athletic piece right here. And right here in the middle are all these opportunities for other stuff, kind of your co-curricular experience, which from a student athlete development perspective is everything from going out and engaging in your community and providing service to others. It can be enrichment and development in spaces like financial literacy, public speaking, technology use, different things like that. And then really this idea that the best way to kind of tackle what it is you want to do when you're done with college is to start as early as possible. And so that really is kind of what our program, that Scarlet Knights for Life program does, is we just start right from the get-go, right when a student athlete first comes on campus and starts to help them to have these opportunities to get to know each other, to get to know themselves a little bit better, and then start to take those steps along the way to build those life skills and meet other people and network. But then kind of, once they have an idea of what it is that they might want to do after they're done playing sport and participating in their college experience, like what does that look like? Do they want to go on to graduate school? Do they want to apply to law school or medical school? Do they want to try and play a sport professionally or semi-professionally? Are they looking for a full-time job, right? Are they more interested in a fellowship that exposes them to an industry that they maybe didn't have a chance to participate in when they were a busy student athlete? And then whatever that is, having them start to reflect and think on that early on, and then help give them the tools and kind of guide them along the process so that when it's time to go out into that next thing, what they call life after sport, that they feel like they are sure of what it is that they want to do next, and they've got support from us in our office in taking those next steps. So
I really like that. I think that sounds like a very helpful program to
yeah.
have.
I hope so. I think so. I think we're adding value for sure to their experience. And we're also the alumni relations office for anybody who played a sport here when they were in college at Rutgers. And so we're able to kind of help them stay connected with their teams and each other. And then we're able to connect today's current student athletes with former student athletes so that they kind of have this built-in network of folks that have been where they are and can help them take the next step to where they want to be.
Oh, that's really nice, the alumni
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
too. I mean, can you share a success story of one of these students who have benefited from this program?
Yeah, I mean, without like getting super, super specific, I mean,
Yeah, of course.
we've had we've had a lot of examples of, times where a student athlete has taken advantage of being, taken advantage of networking events that we've had or online services that match them up with mentors and stuff where those student athletes or those alumni have told us like, oh, we met at this, networking event. And it led to us having a conversation, which then led to, lo and behold, now this person works for me. Or I was able to help them, take their next step in their career. I think the stories that resonate the most with me are when student athletes use our office as a place where they can come in free of judgment and ask the questions that I think like, we've got a lot of people out there that think everybody should know a lot of things. And I think we try really hard to be a space where there's no judgment. So some of my favorite stories are about student athletes that are sending us, a selfie being like, is this the right outfit to buy, at Target to wear to this networking event? Or a student athlete that's like, if I send you a screenshot, does this employer reached out to me via text? Like, I know text can be tricky. Like, is this message an okay message to send back to them? That's like real life. Those are real life questions. And a lot of times I think people think that they're supposed to know how to do everything, especially young people who are high achievers, right? The world expects you to know how to do all these things. And so the truest success stories to me in this space are when we're able to kind of just fill in that gap. So they're not like, it's not going to win an award. It's not going to make the front pages of a magazine, but it's the stuff where I feel like someone was comfortable enough with us in our space here to be able to ask the question that maybe they'd be embarrassed to ask somebody else, or that we've said, how you communicate or what how you show up in a space or how you communicate is really, really important. And if you're not 100% sure, you can come to us and we're going to be here for you. So,
Yeah, that's really nice.
Oh, I like that a lot because
Yeah.
that's like a really meaningful response. And
Like how like the little things impact and matter.
yeah, I think sometimes we think like you go off to college, right? And you're supposed to know how to do everything. And if you have to ask your parents for help, it means like you're not ready for college. And, you know, sometimes parents are great and sometimes parents aren't necessarily the right person. And so somewhere in the middle here in this like kind of career development space and this personal development space is this idea that like there is a right or a better way to do things, and we don't have to make such a big deal about it. We can just have a conversation about it and help out. So I'd rather people ask the question and feel like they have the guidance than either one, not go, right? So you use the example of what should I wear, right? If you're not 100% confident, maybe you're not going to come at all. Or, if you're reassured about it, it's one less thing that's on your mind so that you can really show up in the space, not worried about all of these other things. You're really comfortable and you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's good. In terms of kind of like leadership perspective, what do you think are the most essential traits of a good leader, and how exactly are you cultivating these traits in student athletes?
It's almost one of my biggest biggest values, I think, is really around the idea of a shared, sharing, this experience with each other. Is this idea that I don't think that you can be really excellent alone. I think you have to have a team of people. I think if you want to build a group of people that are, you want to provide this excellent service or this excellent product, or you want to do something really amazing, you probably need a group of people where everybody's kind of good at different things. And it's kind of easy in the student athlete space because most of the time they operate as part of a team. So they already kind of get it, right? It's already kind of ingrained. But I'm have been blown away over my career of how many people feel really like credit hungry, like they want to be the person who everybody says is the person who did the thing. And I'm like, I just think that there's something really magical and special about being able to say, like, there's this whole group of people that did this together and they did it because it was the right thing and they felt really, really passionate about it. And nobody necessarily needed credit. So that would be my first thing is like, if you want to go, you want to do something great, you probably need to do it with somebody else, right? You need to do it with people. And then it sounds so cliche, but um, just being positive, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't trust me. Everybody, I have a sarcastic side to me. I can sit here and be like, are you kidding me? But at the end of the day, just this idea that like you're going to keep trying, you're going to keep showing up, you're going to get excited about things. Like that's literally, if you ask me, like one of the things that bothers me is people who are too chill. And it doesn't mean that I want people who are like super, super alarmist, but there's something really fun when like you can sit around and talk about something and you can have people who are like, yeah, I like this. And even if they don't necessarily agree, I think really good things come out of just like being in this positive energy filled space and figuring out kind of what the next step is going to be. So try your hardest, be positive, and look for others to share the experience with.
Yeah, I love that.
It's like a Hallmark card or something.
No, I think it's perfect. I think those traits actually really summarize how like great leadership works. Sorry, I feel like that's bad phrasing, but like
Oh,
really,
it's
I think that
good. I've been so lucky in my career. The best leaders that have been around are people who weren't afraid to let other people like be an expert in some area. I'll never forget like joining this really, really strong team that I was a part of when I worked in student life and that was part of student affairs. And I remember just being super overwhelmed at how a few of my like counterparts on this team, they were like exceptionally gifted public speakers and they knew technology and, presentation design and all of this stuff really, really well. And I remember just like feeling like, what am I doing? And I fortunately had a supervisor at the time and he's my mentor still. And I said to him, I was like, I don't know. And he's like, and he was able to like sit there and enumerate for me what maybe I possessed as a skill level or a talent that they didn't have. And he was like, "Don't you see? Like, I don't want everybody to be the same. I want all of you to be very different and have these different things that you're really, really good at. As long as we believe in what we're doing, it's okay that we're all kind of contributing our own, great thing to it." And that was maybe the day that I decided that imposter syndrome could like go away, right? So,
No, and this really
Yeah.
ties into what you were saying earlier about how it's good to just find like two or three things you're really passionate about and getting
Mhm.
good at it. Because, no, like you said, there's no reason that everyone has to be an expert at everything, which is,
yeah,
I
it's
really like what you said about having a team, because then you can have an expert in all different fields. And then together you guys are like the
Yeah.
equivalent of like a
Yeah.
superhuman, you know?
exactly. Yeah, the world would be really boring if we all were good at all the same things and bad at all the same things.
So you've managed large-scale events and cultivated community engagement throughout your career. What role do you think community service plays in shaping student athletes as leaders and role models?
I think that, the idea of serving a community is something that to me is can be so ingrained in just your like human experience. I've had just wonderful opportunities to like be in this community engagement space as a young person, as a young adult, as someone who had this as part of their job, like helping to organize and make this happen. And then from a leadership perspective, and I think my biggest takeaway is that it should be an experience and every party gets to be involved in it. So from a community engagement or a service perspective, the thing that I have learned from people who I think do this exceptionally well is that you have to recognize that even though people may be in need, there's this human aspect to it, right? They get to be a part of this relationship that service. That's why I'm so committed to the community service that we do with student athletes being experiential, right? Whenever possible, we want student athletes to be providing direct service. We want them to be interacting with the children that they're serving or the community that they're helping. And if they're doing something where it's easier and not easier, more appropriate for them to not interact with the community, maybe like if they're providing a service for folks who maybe want to receive that service in anonymity, then the next responsibility is always making sure that we're educated, that we understand, you know, like who we're serving and like maybe kind of the things that contribute to people being in need, and that someone who needs something doesn't necessarily mean that they're weak. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone's done something wrong. There are all of these different things that contribute to, the need for service. And I'm having a hard time making my point here, but just I think for me, I'm still so committed to being involved in any job that I am. I want to be involved in the community service initiative so much because I think it is so powerful for people to see beyond service hours, right? This idea that, I have a son who's in high school, right? And you do your service hours for National Honor Society. But at some point you move into this adulthood and you do service and you help it's just being neighborly. And as our world has grown and needs have changed, it has become kind of something we name. But at the end of the day, it's helping a neighbor. And here's the thing about a neighbor is like you'd want to get to know your neighbor and you'd want to have some context and understand what it is that they need. And so, above all, I think service requires education, and the education goes with the experience. And for our student athletes, my goal is that we provide them opportunities to do community service in a way that is so fulfilling for them and it clicks, and that wherever they land after they leave here, they want to look for opportunities to add value to whatever community they end up in whatever way kind of resonates with them, similar to a job, right? There are a lot of things that you can do out there. You can be selfish if you want and find the thing that resonates with you, right? You can help children, you can help seniors, you can help, folks who are unhoused or food insecure. Like you can pick all of these different ways and you can become passionate about that. Through education and through having those experiences and kind of trying it on and recognizing that you add value in that space. And student athletes, for sure, I say all the time, like we take them into, a school for Read Across America or different things like that. And these young people look up to them. And it's not just an opportunity for them to read a book to a young person. I say, like, this is a great chance for you to, like, you don't even have to have a classroom full of, kids who want to play a sport. You can talk to them about how great it is to move your body and how nice it is to make sure that you go outside and try new things. And that really can be the takeaway, right? Not just understanding, what's lacrosse or soccer or whatever it might be. So,
No, very nice. I'm this could be from like a service standpoint or just a general standpoint, but like, well, what legacy or long-term impact do you hope to leave on Rutgers and Rutgers athletics and its student athletes?
it's hard to think about like what your legacy is going to be, right? Like I think in this role here, I want to build something that when I'm gone, when I leave this position, that folks will be like, this is a great program. And one, we understand it, right? It makes sense to us. I mean, it's well defined. We understand what the values and the premise of this program are. Two, it's being run in a way that makes sense, right? It's logistically it works and we're meeting the needs. There's a return on investment here. And I think three is that it has like placed us in a space around, I think for me, personal legacy wise related to this job is like really honing in on the idea that it's the success is really rooted in relationships. It's in, how are you creating community with your peers? How are you, you know, bridging the gap between administration and student athletes? How are you relating to alumni? How are alumni relating to one another? Um, this the thing that has probably been the greatest part of my career here at Rutgers is the fact that my jobs have changed pretty significantly, but a lot of my relationships have they're interwoven into these different roles that I have. And, people are wonderful things, right? They have so much capacity. And so then you just continue to stay in touch with people. And, I was just sitting with one of our interns who works in our facilities and operations team right now. And she was talking about how she has such a great relationship with the interns that she was with last fall. And I told her, I said, it's so great that you're friends and it's so great that you had this shared experience, but you should connect on LinkedIn too, because life might get really busy in the next few months when you're graduating and stuff. And wouldn't it be great to be able to like make sure that you stay in touch with each other and that you can reconnect over the time that you go? And I think that that human connection piece, that's what this program was built on. This reimagined Scarlet Knights for Life program was really built around this idea that if we're going to say that you're part of this family and you're going to be a part of this family forever, then we need to have elements of this program that will make sure that you feel connected to each other and to Rutgers and Rutgers athletics for your lifetime. And so that every day, the work that we're doing, we're trying to add value, but we're always trying to keep that in the back of our mind that it really is about, helping people, helping people to find each other and stay connected to this great place.
Okay, perfect. We want to ask, how do you measure the success of the programs you oversee, and how do you adapt them to meet the changing needs of student athletes?
Well, I mean, the proper answer is we use, assessment data and all of those things. And it's true, we measure success in a variety of ways with data. But I always say that success is when an upperclassman on a team tells the newest member on a team that they should come to our office because we can be really helpful and supportive. And to me, I'm like, it's that word of mouth, right? That's what we've always been trying to go for, is this idea that like, measuring success, I think, is really related to, are our services being used? Are the students finding value? Are the coaches finding value? This idea that you like, I don't know, I think like the way that we're trying to like make this really, really hit home for the student athletes is that it can be a really, college is challenging. Rutgers is a big place. A student athlete has a ton of things on their plate. And when we talked earlier about kind of like you've got, we're kind of here in the middle, right? So we want to add value without adding stress. And so I think that to me is success, is this idea that like you can, and we all kind of in the office do it a little bit differently, but I walked into work this morning and there were 4 swimmers and divers sitting on the furniture in the lobby right after workout. And a couple of them were like, can I schedule a meeting? And I was like, absolutely. And it's like, just take out our phones and find a time that works for us, right? And then when they get here, it has to kind of match up with what it is that they need. We try to customize. When I was maybe like not even a month into this job, I was like, wow, like the student athletes, what they're studying, what their schedules are, what their team requires, it really does create like this one size fits one mentality. And so then we just kind of leaned into that. And I was like, if one size fits one, then we're going to kind of streamline a lot of the other things that we do so that related to like a student athlete's professional and career aspirations and development, we're going to be able to like save some time where we can do that one-on-one. And then I think the second part of that question is how do we meet the changing needs is then we need to be um, learners in this space. We need to track on trends, which we do. Like what are employees looking for? What are for student athletes that aren't 100% sure what they want to do? What are some careers and jobs where they're really needing people, right? What is getting reported back to us that are like some of the skills that employers are looking for that maybe is different from 10 years ago when I was working in a different role and like it had changed, right? A lot of stuff has changed post-COVID. A lot of the workforce is different, right? With virtual jobs and hybrid roles and all of these different things. And so when we sit down with a student athlete to meet with them one-on-one, then we need to make sure that we've done our homework too. That when we're showing up in this space and we're saying, well, here's a resume template that we think you should use, right? So we kind of have to take care of the fundamentals, which we do on the back end here. And then we let the student athlete, depending on what it is they need when they need it, that we let them kind of guide what those meetings look like. And our goal in the end is that when they graduate, they've had a really positive experience when they've been here with a lot of the social and developmental programs that we've done, and that they feel confident about the next steps that they're taking after they graduate, and they've started taking those while they were already here. They're not waiting till that, final moment in senior year to figure out what they're going to do next. And so then, yes. So then when someone, a brand new student athlete comes in, if they've got teammates and other people that they're interacting with that are saying, this is an office that can help you and they really care about you and they're interested in getting to know you personally, that's true. And I would so much rather they hear it from a teammate than from us. So.
I really like that. Jeez. On a more abstract level, what's a mantra or philosophy you live by, and how does it influence your work with student athletes?
Yeah, I think it's the mantra is probably the mantra, the philosophy is very much rooted. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I was introduced to, his Start With Why book and his TED Talk many years ago, and it just resonated with me. And he says basically, people don't buy into what you do, they buy into why you do it. And so I think for me, I've always tried to approach like the different roles that I've had, particularly once I got far enough along in my career where I got to lead teams of people, to think about like, why are we doing what we're doing? And what does it feel like when we're headed there? And I often will say, like, I really want things to be great, but I want it to also feel great in the process. And I want people to feel like they were included. And so that from a mantra perspective means that, we're forced to make sure that we're clear on our goals and our values. Like we have to be able, sometimes when we can't figure out the next step that we want to take on something, I say, well, at the end, what does success look like? Right? What does this look like? And that I think was very much inspired by this idea of like, once Start With Why, it's like you could learn it, but when I watched it and read the book, I was like, oh, now I get it. Like I understand me even better, because this is kind of, I've always wanted things to feel a certain way. I want things to be great, but I want it to like feel great in the process. And if you're going to be someone who's going to like do things with a team, if everybody can buy into why we're doing it, even though people might do it a little bit differently, right? We've got 5 different, staff members here who meet with student athletes. They all run their one-on-ones a little bit differently, but I'm confident, I know for sure that all of us have the same goal for what happens after those meetings for the student athlete experience. So I would really say Start With Why. And I kind of said, earlier, get excited, right? Like love what you do. It doesn't need to consume your life, but it should be something that really, resonates with you and gives you a reason to get up in the morning and come in every day and give it your best.
Are there any other books that you think have influenced your life a lot? I mean,
Um,
that's a great example. I'm just curious.
probably. I could send you some. You could throw them into the notes with the
Okay,
podcast.
okay,
So,
okay, will do.
but that one's great. I'm a huge fan of watching a TED Talk, watching a good TED Talk, so many different things. And then again, taking 2 minutes afterwards and thinking about it instead of just moving on to the other thing on YouTube. So,
So on like the idea of being positive and being passionate about stuff, what's some advice that you would give specifically to young professionals aspiring to work in student development or athletic administration?
well, we'll start with young professionals, regardless of what they want to do. I think one of the most freeing things that you can have someone say to you is you do not need to know what you're going to do with the rest of your life. You just need to know what you're going to do next. Um, I went to college thinking I was going to do something completely and totally different than what I ended up doing. And then I changed my mind 2 different times. And in the end was doing something completely and totally different from that. Right. So this idea that you have to have it all figured out, I think is really overwhelming. And quite honestly, like it kind of limits you a little bit because you'll be afraid to take the next step if it doesn't perfectly align with this plan that you have. That being said, if someone's wanting to work in student athlete development, I would say anytime you want to work with young people, you have to look for jobs where you're around young people. So I've, when I worked in alumni relations, I didn't have a lot of experience working with young people, but I had interns and most people didn't have interns there. And I was like, maybe we should hire, we're trying to do all these initiatives for young alumni. What if we hired a couple, junior, senior college students as interns? And then in the office, there would be people who would actually like be the demographic that we're trying to figure out how to get them excited about programming, right? In student affairs was around young people and interacting with college students all the time. And so I think when you think about like what area you want to be in, a lot of people want to work in sports, but that's wild. That's an enormous range of jobs that you could look for. I think for athletic administration, it's really putting yourself into, I'm a big believer that you put yourself into these spaces where you're going to learn more about the thing that you're excited about or interested in, right? You'll get exposed. And then the advice I always give is whatever is that first chance you have to be in that space. So, say you want to be an athletics administrator, you get a job in any way, shape, or form related to athletics. And then you do two things. One, you crush that job, no matter what it is. Even if it's the least interesting job that you applied for, you're going to give it everything you've got. And two, just like I said earlier, you're going to say yes. When people give you these other opportunities, oh, I know this is your thing, but do you want to help me out with this one thing right now? And I'm not saying like do two jobs for the price of one, but just putting yourself in a space. Like I still remember to this day, like my job when I was in my master's program, I was working for the university that I was at in their foundation office, and I was doing data entry, literally data entry. And one day this woman walks through the office and she's like, oh, whatever, whomever asked us to go over to the art school and help them with an event that they're putting on. And we're going to do a walkthrough for it. And then the event is in a couple of weeks. Carey, would you like to come along? And of course, I looked at my supervisor and I was like, do you care? And she's like, no, run along. That sounds fun. Right. And I end up getting involved in this. It was the very first, other than what I had done as like a student leader in college, like it was like a job where I was like helping to plan an event. It was one of the things that got my resume through to be looked at for the first job I got at Rutgers was because it had event planning as one of the requirements. And I wouldn't have probably been able to like connect the dots if I wouldn't have said, well, I definitely wouldn't have been able if I wouldn't have said, yes, I'll go along, right? Without really knowing what that meant. Say yes, like try things, meet people, connect with folks. Just like the student I was saying earlier, like you never know who you might cross paths with 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If you want to work in athletics, then you want to put yourself in spaces where you're most likely to learn about the job and meet the people who you're going to continue to see as you start your longer career journey.
Oh, very, very nice. For a more personal question, as a co-founder of Rutgers Geek Week, but one, you can tell us a bit about it, but also what's a fun memory or highlight from the event?
Yeah, it was an awesome initiative that one of my colleagues at the time brought with him from another institution, and again, he needed a team of people that were excited about it, and he found it. You know, there were about 5 or 6 of us that really just went all in on this initiative, and it was really, about just, celebrating stuff that people geeked out about, in a college environment. And I think my favorite thing about Geek Week was that it gave opportunity to, I in my role in student life at the time, we ran a ton of events, and most college students would come to them with their friends. But when we started doing Geek Week events, a lot of college students would come to them alone because they hadn't made a friend yet. Maybe they were a little bit more introverted, maybe they were a little bit less likely to show up in some of the like comedy shows and concerts and different things. And we kind of very quickly, once we saw that this was like a draw for a lot of students who came and just were like, well, I'm really interested in these topics or these things. I'm just going to give it a shot. That's so brave, right? To just show up and say, like, I'm just going to see what's out there. Then that very quickly became our why, right? We very quickly like converted that into our why, which was like, we're going to become the place where you find community, not just celebrate it. And so the favorite moment, I think, was, several years after we had started Geek Week, that all of these different students had made friends and these leaders within these different clubs had gotten to know one another. And one night we turn around and they were at this like finale event for like the big week that we would have in February every year. And they were all on the stage singing karaoke together. Like the stage was filled literally with like, I think there were probably 40 people on stage. There were still a bunch of people at the event, but what would have been like karaoke for like 2 or 3 people, it was like the entire stage. It was all the stage could hold. And I looked up there, and because I had been involved in Geek Week all of those years, I looked up there and I could see faces of some of those students who had walked into a room alone 3 years ago or 4 years ago. That's like super cool. Like that's just so cool, right? Like I hope that I mean, I still hear from some of them to this day, and that was years ago, right? They check in with me, I check in with them. I know they check in with each other. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I love that actually. Any chance you remember what song they were singing?
I think they were singing Bohemian Rhapsody.
Perfect.
Wow.
I love that.
At tracks, right? I think that was it. So it's funny because when I was telling the story, I was like, what was the song? So of course I have it on my phone, so I can confirm that for you. I can find that video. So
Good song choice for a good, like a large group of people.
absolutely.
So a more personal question. How do your experiences as a parent of three inspire or inform your work with student athletes?
Well, they keep it real, right? Every day's a living, breathing research project. But honestly, like since I transitioned from alumni relations to student affairs and then into this role in athletics, my kids are 13 years apart in age. I have the three, you said, 13 years apart in age. I've kind of had like a college age, high school, college age kid for like most of the time that I've been in these roles. And like if you approach certain parts of your life like a research project, I'm serious. Like that's like I just like asking questions, getting people's feedback. Like I don't want to if I think something's great, I used to say when people would be like, "Oh, do you want to do assessment data or you want to do an annual report?" I'm like, "Well, I certainly do. I want assessment data because I think we're doing fantastic. I think we're doing a great job. Like if we can have some data to prove it, that would be great." And so similar, my kids they're going to tell me, right? "Oh, this is really cool. Tell me more about this." Or "I don't really know about that." I had my 18-year-old last night look at something online and was like, "Read through this and let me know what you think about it." And so I think it's been it's been really great to be able to have that at home inform some of the work that I've been doing here. I think also, as I've noticed things here, it's made me a better parent too. It's made me a little bit, if I'm going to sit here and say, this is a place of no judgment and there's no stupid question, and you can come here and you can practice all these things, then I need to walk the walk at home, right? So I can't then be like the really strict, like, you should know how to do this thing. I have to make space for there to be growth and development in a different way there, even if I feel like maybe the bar's a little bit, we're going to raise the bar a little bit here. So it's probably made me more patient, more understanding, and much more interested in feedback at home too.
I love that a lot. What do you love most about working at Rutgers and what makes it a special place for you? And I guess anyone else who's considering either
Um,
Rutgers, working there, all of the above.
yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit before about, the relationships and just, I grew up in Wyoming on a farm and a ranch in Wyoming, and I love home. I love it. I'm going back there in a week. Um, but I joke, people who meet me are like, you talk way too fast to be from out there, right? I talk super fast. I didn't have coffee before this podcast because I was afraid I would talk too fast. Um, so I think one of the things I like the most about Rutgers is one of the things I like the most about New Jersey. And I've lived here, 27 years, but I didn't grow up here. I grew up in a place way, way, way different from here. And I always think I've told this story before to people, like when I saw the like meme or whatever, where it was like your car breaks down in California. I don't know if you've seen this, so I'm going to tell you this. This is 'cause literally what I like. So your car breaks down in California, and this person, someone said it was like the difference between like nice and kind. It was this thing I saw online. So car breaks down in California, the person in the car behind you gets out of the car and they come around and they see you have a flat tire and they're just like, oh man, that stinks. Like what bad luck. I really, really hope you've got like AAA or can call somebody, get your tire fixed and get on your way. So good luck. I'll be thinking of you. Have a blessed day, right? Your car breaks down in New Jersey. The person gets out from the car behind you. They walk around. They're like, man, you got a flat tire. You're probably texting on your phone, not paying attention. I bet you hit a pothole. Like, come on now. All right, all right. Pop the trunk. Let me help you change your tire. Right. And like that's what resonates so much with me here is this idea is like this state, this school for sure, this alumni base is filled with people who want to help you change your tire. Like they do. They might give you a hard time about it. They might be like, you should have known better. But at the end of the day, I've never felt alone. Like I've always felt like there's just this group of people. And, I was not that much older than you when I moved here after grad school. And I just felt like there was so much I didn't know. And there were so many things that I was curious about. And just, I mean, some things I was a little, hesitant about. And there were just all these people that just like took me in and showed me the way and brought me along, gave me opportunities, made me a part of their family, work, home, whatever it might be. That's my favorite thing, right? I think that's why having probably, my last thing here be the Scarlet Knights for Life program, like that's great. It totally resonates with me as like you belong here and like we're going to take care of you. We won't do everything right. We're all still learning, we're figuring it out. But that's been my favorite part is feeling like when I moved here, part of the reason I took the job at Rutgers was like I moved here and immediately I was recently married, moved here. This was the job my husband had at the Pingree School. We moved here into a house in Raritan that we hadn't seen, and he starts his job at the Pingree School, and I immediately get so homesick. And I think to myself, I'm like, and I mean, I might talk fast, but I didn't know how to drive in New Jersey. I didn't know my way around anywhere. I didn't really know anybody other than, the family I had just married into. And I just remember like being like, you know what? I'm just going to apply for jobs on a college campus because at least if I can get back on a college campus, that's where I've been the last 6 years. That'll feel like home to me. And that was the decision. You make one decision at a time. So I just decided I was just going to apply for jobs on a college campus. And that's what I did. And then I got the job. And then the next thing came after that. So.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
So sorry if this is unrelated, but I keep eyeing like behind you.
The night.
Rutgers night, yeah.
Night.
Oh,
Yes, it is a
yeah.
life-size knight that was somewhat of a gag gift from a friend of mine when we used to order these teeny tiny little keychains, and then one day that giant life-size Scarlet Knight mascot. That's the mascot in the flesh. He has appeared in many, many new student orientation videos, campus photo shoots. some knock wood, somehow he always finds his way back to me, even though he has been borrowed countless times. So he's good. It's good.
That's
Sir
one of my
Henry.
best
Sir
gags
Henry.
ever
Yeah.
seen. Henry?
Sir Henry.
Or Henry,
Sir
sorry.
Henry.
Yep. That's him.
What?
Okay, so we have a couple closing questions for you. One of them is, what's next for you in this role? Are there any big projects or goals on the horizon for the student athlete development at Rutgers?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we're trying to do right now is to figure out how, we've talked a lot today about just like getting to know yourself, figuring out what your strengths are, where your interests lie with your talent. And we're try to introduce, and we have a program that we're doing with student athletes that's giving them an opportunity to do some assessment and some open-ended questions that helps them to develop their personal brand, get to know themselves a little bit better so that they can feel a little bit more confident in what it is that they might want to do next. And also, it allows them to kind of have a little bit of help in figuring out how to articulate who they are, what matters to them. So, really centered around personal branding, but also this idea that it's nice when, like, if we had more time together, part of what I would do with you is I'd be like, oh, explain to me, like, your capital, your brand, like, what do your friends come to you for? How would your parents describe you, and different things like that. I think sometimes when we're like in this era of our life, we kind of think, you introduced yourselves with your name and your probably your peer-to-peer group or whatever it might be, however you're organized with school. And then I would push to say, like, okay, now if you had to describe yourself using three new things, what would you say? And then three things after that. So college students, a lot of, at least the student athletes will, it's the sport they play, maybe their hometown and what they're studying, right? So then I would say, like, okay, that's great, but now let's go again. And let's go again. What are the next three things that you would use to describe yourself? What are the next three things after that? Um, because we don't want to make things overwhelming or hard, we've entered into a partnership that creates these kits and gives the student athletes an opportunity to do that in a way that is manageable and, provides them with like direct results so that they have this as like an actual tangible thing when they're done. So putting people a little bit more in touch with who they are and giving them the words that they need to be able to introduce themselves to others. So that's kind of next. I think this personal branding space, which lines up very nicely with a lot of the things that are happening in college sports right now with name, image, and likeness, and a lot of big things coming down the horizon in the next few months. So.
Oh, well, thank you. We have one final question for you, and
Sure.
I think you've given a lot of this. Do you have any closing pieces of advice for high school students and anyone else who might be in our audience?
Yeah, I think I think the biggest thing is if you want to take advantage of opportunities, you kind of have to have your house in order, right? So we have this really cool thing that happens sometimes is you have this amazing idea in the shower, right? Or you have this cool opportunity that comes along, and to be ready for it, you kind of have to. So you think about from a high school experience, right? Like, I need to have my schoolwork done and I need to have my prep and my practice for whatever it is that I'm doing done. I need to kind of be organized and like kind of have my life like, a handle on it to be able to do the next thing. And so that I think is the first part of this is, we lead ourselves, right? If we know that we don't do well if we only sleep 4 hours a night, then we need to find a way to sleep 7. But I think what needs to be said every time we talk about taking care of your own business and developing good habits and showing up and doing your best is that you don't, again, you also don't have to do that by yourself. And so I actually snagged this. There's this like people write notes in our locker room and like little aspirational things or inspirational things and aspirational. And this one, I look at it every day and I always think about this. And it says, asking for help isn't giving up, it's refusing to give up. So it's this idea that, I know the school you go to, right? And your peers, it's demanding. You have a million things that you're involved in. You have all of these, you know, these big time classes and all of these other responsibilities. And I think we just assume that everybody can handle it. Like everybody's got it figured out, but we need to figure it out, but we need help sometimes. Like we need to be able to, like, you can't take care of everything at the same time. And I just, for me in this role, like even with the team that I have here, this group of people that I work with that I love, like I'm big on saying, like, what is it that you need? I need this today. You need that today. Like you can't do everything 100% all of the time. But if you can make it a priority to try, then that's where you start to practice like really good habits and really good skills, and you learn to lean on one another. And that's where then I think my biggest thing that I want to leave with you today is then you really do have like this confidence that comes from this place of knowing that like you're really truly being your authentic self. You're asking for help when you need it, and you're being a positive environment, like you're positively impacting the people around you, right? Just like all the way back to when my mentor was like, do you think I need everybody who's great at the same thing? So I think when I scale this back and look at this from a high achieving high school perspective, is this idea is that you might have the friend who's really good at, fitness, and the friend who's really good at like managing their time on their cell phone, and the person who's really good at tech and can help you with some glitch you're having, like, right? You may be those people. Like everybody's good at all these different things. So lean into each other and embrace this idea that like, you don't have to do everything 100%. You want to do the basics really, really well at this point in your life, and you only have to make one decision at a time. Because what year in school are you both?
11th grade.
Yeah.
Okay, so right, you're ramping up. Here we are. How many times are people asking you, where are you going to apply to college? What is it that you want to do when you graduate? What are you going to major in, right? All this pressure. The most important thing that you can do right now is take care of yourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally, and then the rest will come. So ask for help if you need it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I certainly needed to hear that.
You do need to hear it. There are people like me. There are a lot of people that are like me in the world. There are a lot of people who want things to be, want things to be a positive experience for you, and that will provide you support and guidance. So don't think that you have to have it all figured out. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Find the people who won't judge you and that will help you pick out the outfit, figure out what to send in the text, right? All the different examples that we talked about. We're there. There's a lot of us. So thank you both for having me, and Amelia too.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
I
thank you so
appreciate it.
much.
And yeah,
Join.
I'll follow up with an email. At the very least, I'll send you the TED talk from Simon Sinek that changed my life. So
Looking forward to it.
it has references in it that you won't understand, because it references technology and things that don't even exist anymore. So you'll have to you'll watch it and then you'll Google things like TiVo. So, all right.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Thank you both so much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.